It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of the Czech Republic. Here we go! Hello and welcome again to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and we continue Series 25 on the groups and players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Czech Republic's players, and it's in fact part 2 of the player mediacast. Here we look at the selections. In part 1, we made a list of the candidates and introduced them and their likelihood of making the squad. And there is a link to part 1 in the show notes. Part 2 here will be divided into 2 sections, or really 2.5 sections, because we're going to do a little preliminary part looking at the preliminary squads and the warm-up games. And then we'll move into section 1. Where we look over the list we compiled in part 1 to see who made it and who didn't. And in section 2, we summarize the prizes in the selections and review injuries. Okay, let's begin then with our preliminary section. So, Czech Republic released a 26-man preliminary squad, so the final roster that was published on May 28th, and after that they did have one change. They had one player cut due to injury and another player brought in to replace him. So otherwise it was just the final squad that they published on May 28th. Okay, let's talk about the warm-up games a little bit. We were hoping for some light to be shed on who the starters might be, because it had been very unclear in most positions over the course of 2023 and the March 2024 games. However, got to say that the warm-up games didn't shed a lot of light on things. They played Malta in the first and North Macedonia in the second, and for the most part used different players in both games. So we only have a couple of players who showed up in both games. We will mention them, but I think we won't focus on this because it doesn't really tell us much about the starters. Okay, let's go on to part 1 or section 1, the candidates, and we begin with the manager, Ivan Hasak, and he will say he was selected because he was not let go prior to the cup. And on we go to goalkeepers. We had no definite candidates here, kind of indicating the unclearness of the situation in a lot of the positions. We did have 2 likely candidates. The first one was Jindřich Stanek and the other Matej Kovar. Both of those selected, and each one of them starting one of the warm-up games there. We had 3 possible candidates. The first, Jiří Pavlenka, was not selected, nor was the second, Aleš Mandus, but the third one was. That's Vítězslav Jaros. So he was the one selected out of those possible candidates. And there we have our 3 goalkeepers, none of them with tournament experience there. So Aleš Mandus did have tournament experience but was not selected, and we have a total of 10 caps among them, 9 of them to Stanek, so pretty inexperienced there at the back, and we're not sure who the starter is going to be, though we suspect it will be Stanek. Okay, on to the central defense, and the definite candidate is Thomas Holiš, and he was selected. And the 2 likely candidates were also, that's David Zima and Ladislav Krejci. Krejci. We had 5 possible candidates. The first one and second one, Jacob Brabak and Patricio Stranati, neither of those selected for the squad. However, the next 3 were selected. The first, Martin Vitek, was selected. Thomas Vilsack, or yes, Thomas Vilsack, and Robin Franak, all three of those selected. And interestingly, just give me a moment to here. Interestingly, Hranek, our possible candidate there on the bottom of the list, was the only one to start both games. So he started as the central defender in a three-man defense against Malta. And also against North Macedonia. So perhaps that is an indication of him being a starter. We had nominated only Holish was the one we were confident about, but generally Zima and Kreschke made up a three-man defense alongside him. So it is a bit of a surprise to see Hranek starting both games there. But let's move on to left back. And we have a no definite candidate here, but a likely candidate in David Jurasek, and a possible candidate, Jaroslav Zeleny. So Jurasek made the squad, but Jaroslav Zeleny not making the final squad there. And David Jurasek was the only other player to start both of the games. And sorry, I'm wrong about that. He started one of them as a winger. Okay, I'll find the other player who started both. Oh, I know who it is. We'll find him over here in the right back position. But let's list the candidates first. So we had no definite candidate here either. Again, speaking to the uncertainty of selections on the squad. But we did have a likely candidate in David Dudera. And then three possible candidates, Vladimir Sufal, who was selected. Lucas Masopust was not selected, and Adam Gabriel also not selected for the final squad. So just the two candidates here. Dudera actually started on the left side in one of the games, and I kind of suspect that that is what they're going to go with in the cup is Dudera or Jurasek on the left and Vladimir Sufal on the right, because he started both of the games on the right. Only one of two players to start both matches. Okay, let's move on to the midfield. And here we have a definite candidate, Thomas Susek, as the captain of the team, and he was selected. We had a possible candidate, Alex Crow, who was not selected. Among the central midfielders, we have a new candidate, that is Lucas Serve. We'll put him on the list and talk about him a bit later. But let's look at the candidates we had. We had definite candidate Michael Sadilek. However, he had to withdraw due to injury. We'll talk about the nature of that injury. But a big loss to them there. We had considered him a likely starter there, but he is out. Okay, we're left with his namesake, Lucas Sadilek, a possible candidate, and he was not selected for the squad. However, a player who was seemingly off the squad, Petr Sevcik, was selected. So he had last appeared for the national team in March 2023 and is surprisingly selected here. Well, maybe not surprisingly in that he was probably brought in. He was actually brought in from out of the cold to replace Michael Sadilek. That's why we have him highlighted in yellow. He was the replacement. So that explains why a player seemingly off the squad was selected. It may also explain why they brought in a new candidate, although that was before Sadilek left. But Lucas Serve is new to the squad, and he was subbed into one of the two warm-up games. Had never appeared on the squad before that. So we'll just introduce him quickly. Lucas Serve is 23 years old. and plays for Victoria Pulsen in Czech Republic, and just the one cap there in the warm-up games, his only cap for the national team. Okay, sorry, I got a little bit confused with that injury for Sadalek, so I'll just clarify. Sevcik seems to have been brought in before Sadalek withdrew injured, but Lucas Serve was nominated to the squad before Sadalek's injury became an issue. Okay, over we go to upfield to, well, left and right midfielders. We had no candidates there, so we go straight up to the left attackers. And we have Adam Plozek here as a definite candidate. He was selected. And we had Jan Kuchka as a possible candidate. He also was selected. However, our possible but unlikely Vasil Kuzes not selected for the squad. So two left attackers there. For right attackers, we have more. We have no definite candidate there, but Vaclav Cerny was a likely candidate. And we had two possible candidates, both of whom made it, Thomas Chori and Matej Jurasek, not to be confused with David Jurasek, who we met earlier. And so three candidates here, and none of them with tournament experience. And we move on to the central attacking midfield. Here we have a definite candidate in Lucas Provod and a likely candidate in Andre Linger, and two possible candidates, both of whom made it. It was Antonin Barak and Pavel Sulk. Yes, Pavel Sulk. So four of those made it. And all I'll say about the warm-up games is generally most of these players got one start. So we don't have anyone with two starts to point out. All right, we move upfield. We do have a secondary striker for Czech Republic. That is Mojmir Chitel. Generally plays as a forward. And he was selected for the squad. He was a definite candidate, so no surprise there. And we move on to forwards. We have Patrick Schick as a definite candidate, and he was selected. No, he was not a definite candidate. He was a likely candidate. Anyway, he was selected. We had a possible candidate in Thomas Kvankera, and he was not selected for the squad, nor was the possible but unlikely Vaclav Jureka. So once again, nothing outstanding here. All of these players got a start. I should say both, but I'm also looking at Kuchka, who also started as a forward. They went with a two-man forward line on both occasions. So everyone got an opportunity to play, and it didn't shed much light on us for who the starters are going to be. Let's go to section 2, a review of the surprises and injuries. So we do have only one surprise inclusions. No notable non-selections, actually. All of the players who were selected were at the at least the possible level or more. But we did have one player leaving due to injury, so we'll deal with that in the injury section. But the player who replaced him was a bit of a surprise inclusion. It was Petr Sevcik, because he had been off the team since March 2023. So just briefly, Sevcik played for Slavia Prague in Czech Republic and was on the Euro 2020 squad. He started as a substitute and gained a starting position, but he had been off the team since March 2023. But now he's back coming in to replace Michael Sadalek. New players, we just have one that wasn't on the squad when we did part one, and that is central midfielder Lucas Serve. Serve, and yes, we did introduce him earlier on. Okay, updates on injuries then. Michael Sedlak is the only player dropped due to injury, and that came later on into the warm-up games. The problem is a laceration, so that basically, when I hear the word laceration, I think of a big cut. I don't think it's necessarily big, but he was cut in the June 10th warm-up game, and it seemed serious enough that he was withdrawn from the squad. So that's a big loss for them. He was a definite candidate, the central midfielder, and as we saw, replaced by Sevcik. We do have a couple of other injuries, or one other injuries, but it was to a player who was not a strong candidate, Jacob Jugas, but we had considered him off the squad. He is out with torn knee ligaments on a long-term injury there. So really not that much to report, and that brings us to the end of our look at the Czech Republic. So we hope that looking at the players and getting more familiar with them makes watching the game that much more meaningful. Enjoy the cup. We would like to thank Mike Kripak, Big Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this mediacast.